Welcome back to While the Leaves Wither Away. In the last episode, we read through chapter 20, which was a big, massive chapter full of all kinds of happenings. Um, and in this episode, I said I might do all of the remaining chapters in one episode, but I don't think I will actually because um, the final chapter is almost as long as that last one, and I think it would make more sense to have that as its own finale. So, we're aiming to read chapters 21 and 22 in this episode. And the cliffhanger we were left on last time is that Noel and Buck have been taken away. Nate's on his own. He's going to have to figure out how to get them back, how to defeat Giovanni. But without further ado, let's go. Chapter 21, Bottom of the Well. Summary. Find them, Nate. It's what you do best. Buck. All was still now. Leaves halted their rustling after the smoky air dissipated, as if they tried to free themselves from the toxins. Nate's phone sat idly, the song having ended however long ago, bringing silence with its closure. He couldn't move either. As much as he tried to, as much as he wanted to scurry off and find a hole to hide in, there was no one to hide from. No point. No one to cling to, no one to fear, no one to love, no one to guarantee his own death. Since death was long gone now, taking them with him, involuntarily signing them up to greet the heavens or whatever world awaited them. He didn't know. He didn't know a thing. Shit! Nick grabbed the closest thing he could find, being his own clumps of hair that he internally threatened to tear off, fists banging against his head. Shit! 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 Tears spilled out without him realizing, lungs tightening so quickly he might choke right there. Whirring grounded him, a distant incoming mechanical sound, plaguing the skies above, while chasing sirens blared down below. And they caught a peek of it through the trees and tears, illuminating the night where the moon barely tried, the vessel leaving its post for the first time since he'd moved there. Catch him off guard, sending him back down to his knees, the ground rumbled in retaliation. Another crash, maybe. Such a disaster didn't sound so certain the more Nate listened. Those hands still flew to his ears to dry out the battling leaves. Like the UFO brought an earthquake with it, or a sinkhole. A hole in the earth wasn't off the table. The vessel plunged down from the heavens, and an expected deafening blast never came to be. Faltering, the boy moved his hands away, and the stillness came again. What happened? As painful as it was, he needed to calm down. Breathing was always a little easier whenever he had something to hold on to, whether it be his favourite deer plushie or someone else's arm. He sat up for his sleeve, squeezing his wrist and holding it to his heart, half convinced the panicked organ would burst straight out of his chest. The house. The UFO was heading west from the prairie, welcoming itself into town, and the house would be one of the first to greet it. It couldn't have fallen into the sea. It'd all be washed away from tsunami by now. And the houses further along wouldn't stand a chance. Their cries heard for miles should they be crushed. Further into the forest was his best bet. For finding them, and for Noel! His heartbeat skyrocketed once more, scrambling into a panic and rushing to seek refuge behind a thick tree. He should have known they'd come looking. Mum, he whispered to himself, both parents soon appearing as they walked in the distance, blindly searching for both their children. Nate felt the waterworks starting up again, faster every time either of them called a name out. He just wanted this to be over. That was all he ever wanted since the start. The terrors of yokai and their grip on his cursed family to fade into a forgotten memory. So how could he possibly face them now? How could he jump into his mother's arms, begging for reassurance after losing their daughter once again? Swallowing his guilt as hard as he could try, he quickly evaded their line of sight, retreating back to the house, silently promising to his parents that both of their children will return. He didn't have a choice. Crawling into the forbidden land wasn't so difficult, now with the path memorized and all. That crushing atmosphere never left, bringing a chill with it, the hairs on the back of Nate's neck prickling out once more. Somehow, despite his stable footing, the ground felt hollow, like it could rip apart at any unsuspecting moment, dragging him down to the underworld. The more he thought about anything, the more he wished for it to be true. A rightful punishment, should he never find him again. No, Nate. You can't give up now. Swallowing his doubt, he trudged deeper into the grounds, already feeling his eyelids flutter. Above all, he was tired. So tired. Turning the house's corner, there was a lot to comprehend. The path leading up to the manor had completely disappeared, replaced with a gaping hole. A shrinking one, gloomy and grey, leaving an obnoxiously large clearing amidst the few trees that miraculously survived. Surely big enough to fit a vessel such as Giovanni's? Did Noel's plan work? Did the yokai dream for something bigger after all? And did Giovanni follow through with it in the end? He still wasn't sure what to make of it. He was struggling to think, forced to be still as, to his dismay, he wasn't the only one here. Lost child, are you hurt? He nearly yelped. Only now did he notice a deer also peering down into the hole, and he wasn't sure whether to be more surprised by its white coat or the fact that it talked. It looked back, beady eyes enough to make Nate's heartbeat race, and it must have sensed that as it soon took on a different form, a human one. How about this story, A memory haunted him. They call this one the repress, sweetie. It's the one appointed to guide people to the afterlife. The reminder practically screamed at him as soon as it showed that familiar face, or lack thereof, only two bright eyes lost within the void of its neck. No doubt about it. Another yokai. He figured that'd be the case with the deer in his few silent encounters with it, but only now did it finally click. No. But, no. Nate spluttered, hoping he'd already used up all his tears for the night. My sister, he took her. He and my, but the spirit seers twitched at that last part, though it remained nonverbal, hazily staring down the gateway below. Nate's gaze followed, head slightly nodding off. You know who I'm talking about, right? Did they go through the gateway? You'd better rest before you overexert yourself. No, please. I need to... He shuddered to think about it, about all the possibilities swirling around and deteriorating his hope. Were they even still alive, he wondered, no matter how much he didn't want to think about it. And if they were, then for how much longer? How long can they carry on like this? As Giovanni's toys, only there to tear them apart over and over again. How long until everything is reduced to rubble, until their last breaths stolen by the hands of the Asinine? How long can he go standing around and doing nothing? Slowly, the sole of his shoe shuffled close to the gateway's edge. He contemplated it before looking back. This all-powerful divine, still silent to his pleas, a meek sheep to justice. Supposedly, the job of a reaper doesn't mean protecting souls, only taking them. He should have known that much. And how could it, who seems chained to these grounds, reap anything but the souls lost to the fire several years ago? And why was it kept prisoner here? It wasn't his problem, he thought as he shook his head. There were far more pressing matters to worry about, the other half that made his stomach queasy as he stared down to that bottomless abyss. He didn't have time to think about what would happen, where he'd end up, how he'd end up, should he wake again. It wasn't worth returning home by himself. He wasn't going to put his family through that again. Springdale, freedom, was a stone's throw away only if he shut down his fear. With that in mind, and a heart-pounding hesitation, he threw himself in. And the prisoner helplessly watched. Is it an earthquake? Shit, my fine, I'll leave until Thursday. The public's murmurs soon tuned out from Nadia's ears. Anything she heard from then on, tunneling into the gap between the trees lining at the forbidden grounds. She wanted to know how late it was now. All of the East Pine and the neighbourhoods beyond abruptly woken up from the crash. Parallel circumstances to a night only months prior. Only this time it was far closer, far more impending, and it left a great pit in her stomach. They come rushing out the forest from the moment they saw the vessel plummet through the sky, finding several others gathered in the same exact place. Right beside the small memorial by the fence, though it wasn't so small anymore, ever since the grave was destroyed. The public tutted at how consistently the Hazeltine's name was tarnished. And Harvey nodded the bullet. You don't think... His words shuddering as he placed a frail, shaking hand against the chain-link fence, barely turning his gaze to his wife, only able to focus on the gradual uphill ascent the blocked-off path led up to. It must have dropped here, the UFO, but no one had a clue how no rubble or collateral damage was left behind. Any further out and it would have reached the sea. Nadia simply shook her head, knowing instantly what he was implying and refusing to believe it herself. The kids could be anywhere, but not there. Not trapped in that thing. Never. They couldn't. Maybe they got scared, she suggested, her sentences finishing a little faster than usual, increasing in speed with each breath she took. They're scared and hiding. And they're still even to the forest. They don't have any service, so I can't call them, and they can't call us because. She felt a hand on the ground at her, accompanied by a hushing whisper. Nads. Nads. That has to be it, right? She hiccuped. Don't tell me I'm insane for thinking that. I don't think you're insane. No. But hesitantly, the two of them looked back to the grounds, and before Harvey could let his forming tears show, he scoffed and retreated to the side, away from the gossiping public. No answer once again when he tried calling on his phone. Nadia wincing as that fact was made clear by his grumble, followed by a short voicemail. Well, nosy baby, your mother and I are worried sick, you know. Just please come home whenever you can. All of you, and we can have a wee chat about it. I don't know if you're... He quickly stopped himself when he heard his voice starting to crack. Never mind. Stay safe, okay? Please. I love you. He had to rush that last part, quickly cut off by the wailing sirens approaching the scene, and everyone whisked off to the sides as the officers came to investigate. Nadia had only made the decision from the moment they arrived. We need to tell them the kids are missing. Harvey had barely lifted his head up before she left, cutting through the crowds and heading straight for the first available officer she found. What? Nadia. Do you know why I chose a UFO, Wyatt? Giovanni couldn't even be bothered to look at him. The vast outside world beyond the vessel's tar-tinted windows enamored him far more than anything else. For once in his life, he considered himself wrong. This world of yokai dealers had jumped into, all uniting together to make one simple wish. He thought it to be a stepping stone he could simply kick to the side. How naive he was, as much as he hated to think about it. Here, where greater power could be born, especially for those such as he who'd evolved to greater forms, standing superior amongst the minuscule, identical commoners. It brought a sense of nostalgia and a hunger for potential. That delusion plagued him. He was too far gone now. Only the small, cowering reflection on the glass reminded him that his son was present, quivering at the desk. Wyatt, Giovanni huffed once more, demanding a verbal response, yet only receiving an indifferent shrug of the shoulders. Still, he carried on. Because of you, mio figlio, he revealed. You and your incessant yammering of the vast universe when you were small. I thought it to be a ridiculous fantasy, a childish dream. Yet you still came rushing as soon as his vessel plummeted from the sky. He was smirking now, turning back to the window, and Buck had every opportunity to dash out the room, but he just couldn't. The words weighed him down. His father's grasp on him still holding tight, even when his hand wasn't anywhere near the boy. Apparently, they were about to touch down to solid ground for the first time since going through the gateway, and Buck was still too petrified, solid as a rock, malleable like hot metal in the hands of the devil. And the devil wasn't going to stop at anything if it meant getting his way. It was all for you. Us yokai have many abilities under our belt. I'm sure you've seen your friend there. He nodded to the door. Feisty for someone so cold. As for me, my dreams of the future. I dreamed of 3 things. A following, artificial at first, but growing naturally as more indulged in my beliefs. This vessel for transport, floating along this deserted plain till I found a gateway back to reality. And you. Buck felt his lungs clog up when Giovanni turned back to face him. You, my protege. The future of my influence. That gem, signaling me to your presence. The weapon I planted behind the grave. The head start in shaping a world fit for your rule. Don't you see? This was all for you. Backed up entirely, feeling the hairs on the back of his neck tickle into both his skin and the wall, Giovanni still knew exactly where he cowered from the loud, shaking breaths alone. While his vision was almost entirely impaired now, his left eye unusable, his right partially blinded from the fire, that didn't stop the cogs turning in his head, going forward with his plan by any means necessary. So he approached, hearing feet shuffling to scramble away, never bothering to panic as he knew that, like always, he had his son right where he wanted him, and he'd never dare to disobey. At least not to his face. I will fix you, lost boy, Giovanni continued, his grand figure casting a shadow over Buck. Capiche? Do you understand? Execution is in order for tonight. For that girl, and that. For a moment, his brittle nails dug into his palms. That boy. That Frocio. Once he arrives, I know he will arrive. The way you got under his skin. He laughed humorlessly. Buck choking back tears at both the sight and the situation that came crashing down, clutching onto the dull pendant by his chest so tightly that it may crumble. Another beloved life lost to your hands, my boy. His words echoed through the room, replaced with heavy footsteps once he retreated to the hallway, bouncing along the walls. Too loud to hear her squeaks, too focused to check the room and find her. The way he saw it, she was wrapped around his finger. Only needed when the time was right. She couldn't possibly escape in this state, only able to desperately murmur his name. Nate. Poking and prodding took a lot longer to spare a reaction than hoped, but soon enough a strained whine was drawn from the boy's lips. He blinked slowly, his vision gradually returning to him, and processing the unfamiliar surroundings he found himself dropped into. But the first close-range entity he witnessed was a faint memory. A couple of spirits, an evolved yokai staring him with a matching puzzled look, like they were in the presence of an unknown species he'd never seen before. He must have gotten the short end to the sick, memory problems akin to his sister. The reminder of her forced Nate's head to shoot up. Well, he instinctively called out, hooted only made an echo bouncing along the mist. He needed effort to see anything in this fog, though he did make out a dead tree here and there. The yokai world? He wasn't sure. Either way, it sent chills up his spine. It wasn't quite supernatural, but not quite human either. The sky painted a dull red, blanketing the air above, and he suspected they didn't get rain as the grass lay dry and grey like straw. Immediately, he looked around in search for that gateway. The light it illuminated surely being enough to guide the way. No such miracle came to be. Am I trapped? He bit his lip, a cloud of anxiety already pulling his head, as the way out wasn't yet certain. It was swiftly pushed to the back of his mind, however, and he regained his focus. Noelle and Buck. Just find them. Find them like he always did, and as he always needed to seek. Though he hadn't a clue where to start. Locating the UFO seemed the obvious choice, but its signature wearing and need to plummet from the sky couldn't be found anywhere. So he walked, paying no mind to the little spirits prattling behind, following along and gawking at how gigantic his footsteps were compared to theirs. What are you... The casual stroll didn't last long, escalating into a brief sprint once the yokai scurried ahead, as if they'd found something. For a moment, Nate stood idle, perplexed, then too charged as his wary eyes picked up on the slight firelights blinking in the distance. The chase didn't last long, screeching to a halt when the yokai did the same. He seeked shelter behind the trees. I think that's meant to be sought shelter behind the trees. Naturally cowering from a towering force. And as the fog lifted, the blame could be all pinned on that damned vessel, carefully lowering onto the clearing below. They had to be in there. Surely. My yokai. I mean no harm. He was ready and waiting to step out as the bottom of the UFO created an opening, subtly thrilled to see all the small creatures that had already come prattling out of hiding to witness. Nate stayed glued to the tree he was hiding behind. Such hopeless creatures. You've arrived here without any clue or reason, yes? I take pity, I do. And as such, I offer an opportunity. Giovanni had them right where he wanted them, a sinister smell disguised under a warm, sickly tone. I am who you should all aspire to be, a yokai, evolved and purposeful, granted this second chance from none other than our holy divines for breaking the chains of mediocrity. In life, I was a senator, looked up to for my values, and it was a tragic accident that cut my life so short. Nate made a sour face at the bullshit he was spouting, made it even worse from the fact that the innocent yokai believed every word of it. So come with me. We will return to that world stained with humans and their vile ways of living, and reshape it to be ours. Or you shall stay mindlessly wandering this desolate plain forever. The choice is yours. Though, those of you who are willing, it appears the trial's already emerged to prove your spirit. That intruding boy. It'd be a great pleasure if you bring him to me. Huh? All beady eyes landed on Nate, his shoulders dropping. With no one to follow, walking aimlessly for who knows how long, suddenly offered a purpose within these promises. The yokai charged. No, wait, stop that! Though smaller in size, they bested in numbers, the horde quickly overwhelming him as they tackled. He made efforts of curling up into a ball, unwilling to hurt, shielding himself from the eager souls so finding to drag him, but his conformity to the dictator was inevitable, even if it was against his will. He landed knees first in front of Giovanni, wincing at the impact and hunching forward while desperately trying to catch his breath. Cautious footsteps came, heavy in their stride, Nate swearing he could feel the vibrations slither through the ground and rise to the surface to rattle in his bones. Nathan. For a long moment, he refused to give the eye contact he was silently instructed to obey. Giovanni tilted his head, wagging a finger to the looming yokai, and quickly understood. The boy yelped at a jab to the waist, the pebble slamming into his flannel, forcing him to stare up at his superior and give in. With that in place, Giovanni faintly seeing the terror in his eyes for his own defective one, he spoke up once more. You and I are yet to converse calmly. However, we can both agree that is useless by now. No? Nate spoke in shudders. Any attempt at getting a word in, an excuse, a reason, or an apology, it'd be futile at this point. Giovanni's decision was already made a long time ago. You've broken my son, dragged him down to your own laws, brainwashed him into believing he could possibly be such a filthy stain of nature. Do you truly think, as his father, I could spectate and do nothing to stop that, even in the afterlife? The silence ticked him off. The trembling lips of the boy were parted and shut tight over and over, telling him everything the man needed to know. A coward wouldn't face with judgment. Such a pitiful life that must be. A trap Giovanni was eternally proud of never falling for. He tutted, drawing the familiar gun from his pocket. Nate once again finding himself eye to eye with the muscle. Pests such as yourself are inexcusable in this damned world. Giovanni deluded himself, his finger floating over the trigger. In the world of humans, yokai, or the border between. Once I fix my wire, we will ensure you vermin are annihilated, all to write a better world for our lords and safe. The hands flew to their ears. They almost jumped out of his skin. Beyond Giovanni, the colossal vessel peered over the execution, interrupting all plans the tyrant had on the young boy. A siren blared, lights flickering and danced, random nonsensical disruptions, all to give Nate time. He quickly realized that, and with the watch already known to be rendered useless, his wrist remained laying on the ground, his hand making quick work to gather sand. Confused above as anything else, Giovanni nonetheless regained his sense of priority, returning to his glare back to the boy. What a cruel mistake that had been, the sand particles spraying all over his face and rubbing into his wounded eye as Nate threw with all his might. Gah! Giovanni grunted, backing up and nearly tumbling down entirely, with thick fingers scratching at the inflicted area and the pain it erupted. He only needed a few seconds to recover, swearing to himself not to lose his focus, to ensure that boy's death. But when he came to, the boy was gone, scampering into the UFO in search of them. A violent, enraged roar boomed and echoed across the vessel's hallways. Nathan! The sound nearly pierced through his eardrums, and as such Nate only sprinted faster. With all his might, with everything he had, all to prove his worth, to escape such a legacy, one of cowardice and failure, to find them. It was all he could do to redeem himself, but the dark walls were caving in, at least in his mind, making everything dizzy and nauseous. And Giovanni wasn't far behind, a predator locked onto his prey. Nate begged for the hallway to encircle the vessel forever. It'd be futile to keep believing in that, he knew. Doors were lined up against both sides, leading to the unknown, housing whatever machinations Giovanni dreamed of, and whoever he held captive. The stakes were unbearable. Desperately, Nate gave in to the peril as his stamina ran dry, purposely slamming a lone door to alert the ghoul, and stumbling to carry on several rooms ahead, quiet as could be, lost to Giovanni's waning vision as he turned the corner. Nate was on the brink of collapse, secluding himself in the drab room, all the boxes around presumably signaling it as a large storage closet. He found himself falling onto his knees once more, feeling as if he may break apart any moment, hands spread out across the floor to keep him sitting up. I can't, he murmured while gasping for air, zipping his mouth shut as the footsteps intruded the hallway, allowing several seconds of hesitation to be passed by and continued along the corridor. Can't do this. His insistence on being brave could only get him so far. Shattered in practice. Alone once more, trapped just like the others, he'd already assumed it to be over. They lost. Russ slowly leaning to his head up. He couldn't see a thing in the darkness, that fact alone causing his heart rate to drastically spike. He reached for his pocket, lifting it from his phone and now dawned a couple more cracks, his heart breaking a little to several missed calls when the signal was still reachable. Who's... He switched on the flashlight, illuminating the offending corner. A second pair of blue, teary eyes stared back. Found her. Chapter 22. If I could be by your side. The summary is, to the flowers that still bloom through the cracks, to the stars lighting up his world. Noelle? It'd be foolish to ask for identity, he soon learned, as even in the dark her quivering form was clear as day. Unable to get a word out, surely unable to move much, Nate imagined, with tears lining her eyes, his own unwillingly copying it all the same. Noelle! He wasted no time, collapsing to his knees, encasing her in an embrace so firm he was determined to never let go. To never stop whispering apologies into her hair, each one drawn out by a louder sob than the last. She hiccuped, stumbling to try again. Nate, it hurts. I know, he sighed, words shaking. He'd already caught a glimpse of the dark liquid staining her forehead and cheek. How could he not? It's been a mix of emotions: sorrow, anger, fear, despair, and a need to protect. Not only that, but it solidified for the both of them that she wasn't to go off by herself again, no matter how small, no matter how much she claimed to have it under control. He didn't care if it was overbearing. All he cared for was for her safety. While safety still wasn't guaranteed, she was still stuck in this vessel. Nate promised it nonetheless. We're going to get out of here, okay? He whispered, his fingers still threading through her hair in a similar fashion their parents would often do, even leaving a small chapped peck on a spot he just rubbed. I'll deal with Giovanni. You just rest now. Rest. No! Noelle whined expectantly, still trying to talk even in her frail condition. Nate tried not to let it bother him too much. Don't! He's gonna... You can't! Nate! Please! Nate! Shh! Hey! You can barely even talk, he sighed, paying no mind to her refusal and dug into his pocket instead, taking out a familiar roll of gauze. Now, are you gonna let me deal with that? She didn't have an answer, instead of reluctantly leaning against the wall, and the times where neatly to wrap the gauze around the left side of her head. He gently nudged with his palm, and his other sleeve scrunched up to wipe away the dry blood. Dork, he heard her croakily murmur, still able to keep her humour intact despite the circumstances. Nate couldn't be more glad to hear it. Not. You seem to be more careful. Does that hurt? Everywhere fucking hurts. I figured, sorry. He frowned, wincing at the bitter tone he should have seen coming from a mile away. She was hit her pretty badly, he assumed, his sleeve his sleeve swiftly stained with a dark muddy glow. And he wasn't too sure how easily a cable can come off from the laundry. You were just hiding in here? She nodded. I was at the house, though, I swear. Ended up here somehow. In an office or control room or something. Ran away and you heard and chased. Nate, jeez! His face scrunched up, seething as he accidentally wrapped the cords around the wood a little too tightly. Sorry. We know where we are, though, right? The UFO, she mumbled. Thought so. Went in the first room I found. Collapsed. Thought I was gonna die. Oh, nosy. Done with the bandage, she rested her head back onto his shoulder, never daring to hold it up on its own in case she'd faint again. Sirens went off. Woke me up. Nate blinked. So that wasn't you? No, she huffed. Hell no. I'm not getting near that damn room again. No one would ask you to. You just rest. Noel, please rest. His begging finally found resolve, gaze softening to her eyelids closing, surrendering the fight and doing as instructed. Silence followed, far less tense than before, as much as the situation tried picking them both apart. There you go, Nick whispered, clinging to the hope that she'd be okay. She was on the brink of sleep again, it appeared. The quiet it brought easing and clearing his head. Just need to get out of here. The little tips and observations from their dad's skill in the medical field weren't enough. He could fix them up in no time. The adrenaline potentially losing them both being more than enough fuel. Nate bit his lip, flicking his gaze to his phone. Absolutely no signal, as expected, and barely enough battery to last another hour or two. Their parents would have to hang on a little longer. Apologies would have to wait. The twins would sit there for several minutes, Noelle forcing herself to cling to consciousness despite Nate's insistence on the opposite. She didn't want to have to leave him alone in here, unable to fight back due to her own incompetence. She'd never forgive herself if something happened. Nate kept a close watch, observing how her lashes fluttered, maybe pretending to be asleep just for his own peace of mind. That idea was impaled as the hallway alerted them, a faint crash or boom emerging further down. Nate sat up straight. Neither of them said anything. Noel's eyes forced wide open to lock onto the door. Nate's in unison. Something rattled, progressively getting louder as it drew more close, like locked doors refusing to allow entry. One soon worked, the handle of their respective storage room quivering by the desperate hand from the other side. Nate forgot how to breathe for a second, and a familiar face came tumbling in. Buck! Nate cried out as soon as he recognized that red head of hair, watching it collapse to the ground and scurry, the boy chasing air. He didn't look all too well, and the brunette took a quick glance to his sister, who simply groaned and shoved herself to lean her head back against the boxes instead. But, hey, Nate repeated, now free to jump in to help. Buck wasn't listening, staring down at his lap and clutching his chest as if that had steadied the breathing, whispering, Merda, Merda, in frantic chant. Only physical contact grounded him, the simple touch of Nate's hand on his knee forcing his head to rise, pupils dilating at the sight. Nate, he heaved, and for the first time in a while looked hopeful. Then a damp pen began its infuriating glow once more, and he slammed his palm over to block it all out, smile on his face ripped clean off. Still, Nate couldn't be more relieved. I was so worried. I thought you... It's glowing because he's trying to find me. What? Despite his claim, the gem died soon after being snatched in Buck's grip. It didn't debunk it entirely, however. It was worse than he's imagined. Murder. Of course it needs energy to work, right? Man, sapping away at my happiness. That's how Father tracks me down. Every fucking time. Every time. Okay, calm down. You can't deny it. Whenever I ain't miserable, it does that. You saw it for yourself back at the market. But it doesn't matter. Nate tried his hardest to drill it into Buck's skull, hands flying to his shoulders and even daring to give him a quick shake. You're here, okay? You're fine. So, what, it's a compass or something? Fine, but where would Giovanni to find you now when we're already stuck? Buck bit his lip, Nate shuffling back a bit. Did you do something to make him mad? He was avoiding eye contact on purpose. None of the boys finding the right words to say, the correct things to suggest. So Noelle chimed in, declaring it as loud as she feasibly could. The sirens! And glared softly at Buck in his wide eyes. So, how? You whacked every button you could find? Why even? I did, Buck confirmed, scratching his neck and returning the harsh look with one of his own. It was to save Nate. Thank you kindly. Idiot. What if you blew the whole thing up? You'd rather leave him for dead? Guys. A hiss was drawn from Nate's lips, brows furrowing and sparking a slight shock into the arguing duo. They both huffed, turning their heads the other way like some toddlers. Nate's fingers dug into his palms. Buck was the control room. He blinked in response, quickly recounting the path he took. Left from here, pretty sure. Up some stairs and down another hall. Nate nodded, rising to his feet. Alright, you two. Alright, you two stay put. No! His sister croaked out, rushing to lift her head a bit too fast for her energy's liking. Wincing as it inevitably fell back onto the box. Nate, I swear to... It's fine. Noel knows. Trust me. Hey, calm down. A look of panic flashed across her face, helpless at the decision he'd already settled on. His knees rushed to hit the ground again, stumbling over so he could ease her worries. We can't stay here forever. You know that. Let me come with you then, damn it. She sniffled. I'm fine, I swear it. Just give me a minute. It's only to take a look. Nate paused, finding the right words to say. We can go back to the original plan, yeah? Giovanni will be in the control room checking the silence, and surely... And here's the blaster. I'll take a peek no longer than 10 seconds. Then I'll come straight back and we can go together when you're feeling better. Trust me. Gently brushed some loose strands from her face, her ponytail disheveling a long while ago. You need to promise to trust me, Nose. Of course, she didn't look all too keen, not at all, despite doing something similar just hours prior, now facing consequences of such a suicidal mistake. I want to go home, she murmured, balm lip wobbling with every word. I want Mom and Dad. I miss Daddy. I know. Nate felt his own eyes getting a little misty. We'll go back and see them soon, I promise. Just need to deal with Giovanni first. And you need to hang on a little longer, okay? She didn't respond, head hung low in defeat, though a part of Nate suspected that would be the case. For both of them. Buck's spirits weren't exactly high either, Nate turning around to find him mindlessly fidgeting with the pendant, his thumb gently tracing the red string looped around his neck. If it was true, how it glowed to avert Giovanni to their location, he knew he didn't have long. Even with the handicap, his resilience was far too extreme, his honor too valuable to him. I'll be back soon, Nate declared, burrowing into his despair to find the faintest will to smile, even if it was small. Tried to bite off Buck's head before I come back. He was gone before she knew it. That fact only processing in her mind with the careful close of the door behind him. She should chase after him. She knew that. An extra defense in case things went south. With the high odds they would. It made her stomach churn. In truth, Buck longed to do the same. Eyes looking a little empty while he sat at the door a little longer than what was deemed normal. He ain't a baby, he mumbled, catching Noel staring. Like he said, you need to trust him. That heavy truth loomed, and she soon scoffed and turned over to face the wall. You don't get it. Che dannati bambini. Footsteps boomed despite the carpeted floors, a livid man pacing back and forth until he proved himself slightly dizzy. He snarled, breaths heavier than what was assumed normal, all witnessed by the couple of confused spirits slowly cowering into a corner. Non è abbastanza. My efforts, are they not? In an instant, his hand swung against the desk in a clean sweep, knocking off a couple of books where damage would be blasphemous. One nearly hit a trembling yokai, the little creature falling onto its behind. Pale eyes staring up in terror. That damned Wyatt! Is it never enough for him? How sick must he possibly be? Desperate for answers at this point, he turned to the mute yokai, useless to his aid, unwillingly fueling him with more rage than he could possibly contain. Obsessing over such an imbecile! Pezzo di murder! How naive can one get? Is this failure? While they refuse to... He stopped himself before he could admit it out loud, too afraid to physically hear it outside his own head. Everywhere he turned was met with injustice. Were his promises never enough? White was promising from the moment he was born. From the moment that first mistake was erased, carefully plucked to fit Giovanni's needs. And throughout childhood, though often needy and reckless, he still held on to hope that it was simply cause of a powerful stance the boy could develop as the years passed by. So why did you do it? Oftentimes he'd hear his wife taunt him with such words, even in death, from the moment she lay there still. Dull, lifeless eyes, and a fractured neck to his own hand. That would haunt him no matter how much he convinced himself the deed was necessary. A body reduced to ash after many years of silent judgment and never learning her place. Truly, this was what was deserved. And yet the one punished for it was him. He could hardly comprehend it, scoffing each time he'd blink and she'd be lurking in that brief darkness, watching, aphonic, yet tormenting all the while. Perhaps it was a punishment they sent out. Perhaps they demanded more. His back straightened, posture swiftly fixed as he placed the gun on the desk. Find him! He ordered the yokai, who wasted no time scrambling out the room, fearing for the worst should they refuse. And once they dispersed, Nate did the same, coming out of hiding behind the open door and creeping back to the dark closet. Noel was waiting, desperate for his return. She'd been giving it her all to stay awake, almost nodding off more often than not, lightly snapping her cheek to force her consciousness to wake up. And she'd never dared to glance or peek at the other side of the room, those brown boots barely visible in her peripheral vision, already picturing the scowling face he was giving her. She couldn't be more wrong. Finally catching a glimpse of it when he shuffled closer. One day, I gotta teach Nate how to wrap up wounds properly. Noelle furrowed her brows. It's fine. It ain't. Feels like you're squeezing your brains out, I bet. Is that what happened to yours? He ignored her stocky comment, exaggerating his eye roll to ensure she definitely saw. Lie down, at least. Stops you from feeling so dizzy. She had a feeling he wasn't going to stop bossing her around until she'd do what he says, so, with a scoff, she gave in. Admittedly, it did feel a little better, even on the hard, solid wood floor. Silence fell around them once more. Buck picked at the skin around his fingernails, awkwardly clearing his throat. It's a lot more capable than you take him for, you know. Noelle would rather opt out from talking to him at all. Though that silence was miserable enough to make her change her mind, she grumbled, turning her head back to the wall. Doesn't mean he could be as careless as you. No, I ain't saying all that. Scratching the back of his neck, Buck shrugged. Not expecting to do anything stupid, just... I trust him. And I know I can trust him. For anything. What a charmer you are. He blinked. Still hate my guts? I don't. Now slightly curled up into a ball, and Noelle squeezed her eyes shut. You're trying to be good, I know, but there's a shit ton of bad that I'm still not over. I figured. And Nate, I don't know, he's nicer than I am, she murmured. She mumbled, eyes drooping. A simple sorry is enough for him, but You're not so forgiving. He finished his sentence for her, observing how the words alone seemed to dampen her mood. I get why you think that way, though. You don't. Alright, maybe not fully, but you had your own shit going on, so I get that part of it. She froze for a moment. Did Nate? Damn it. If you want me to forget about that, then I'll try my best. While Buck was left internally panicking, Noelle took a little longer to process it. She should have known it'd be spoiled eventually. After all, in terms of memory, Nate got it worse. Had he been bottling it up for a while, she wondered. The thought made her ill. I'm fine now, if you care. Well, yeah, I gathered that. The average person thinks you're still alive and kicking. So, let's keep it at that, she demanded, pushing herself to sit up even through a wince, shaking her head to Buck's hands offering to help. You don't go telling anyone about me, or yokai in general, got it? And even then, I don't know if I can forgive you yet. Geez, the state you left Nate in after the carnival. I know. Buck couldn't look at anything but the floor, his heart physically aching, the pulse beating in his eardrums. Sorry. I'll make it up to him. And you. Both of you. I swear it. Her eyes squinted. Swear? Swear, he nodded. For starters, that gun is ours. Giovanni's fixing for a bullet between the eyes. Unsure if she'd regret it later, Noelle still chose to believe him. Pushing all past judgments aside for the time being, she shrugged. Good enough for me? Subtly, Buck smiled at her answer, knowing it was the best he was going to get. No one noticed, her own grin creeping into view, but only briefly. The door's lock clicked and a familiar brunette peeked his head in. Silence was more than a little unsettling, even when Nate was suspecting it. Oddly, this felt like a different variant. Everything okay? Yep, Noel quickly confirmed, flashing a short smile. Same with you? He shook his head, not to disagree, but to show disapproval. I told you not to worry. And straightened his face a bit when turned to Buck. You? I'm all good. Nate clicked his tongue. Okay, so can you do me a favor? There wasn't much time to answer that question, if any at all. Buck blinked 1 second, and next Nate backed up beside him to take the pendant into his hand, delicate as could be. Quizzically staring down at the shorter boy, Buck asked the most sensible thing at that moment, confused by Nate's distracted behaviour. You found the blaster? Shh. I, he whispered, shutting up right away. Though he'd be lying if he said he didn't mind. It felt oddly calming having Nate so close. Even the thought alone was enough to make him believe he might go into cardiac arrest. No, I think that Nate's going to try and do something to make Buck happy, which will activate the pendant. Then he'll tell Buck to go off somewhere, lure Giovanni away. Then he can go sneak and get that blaster, hopefully. If he did leave it in, because he put it down in the room before. If he leaves it there, which he might do because he might just be in a hurry and forget about it once he senses the UFO still working. So when Nate's head fell into Buck's shoulder, abruptly placed as his stare remained locked onto the stone, that feeling was all the more prominent, fluttering, causing the corners of Buck's lips to twitch up ever so slightly while his inside screamed. He wasn't the only one to react, the hazy glow from the pendant gradually increasing in power. That was all the proof Nate needed, the boy's smile softening. I don't think it's a compass, like you say. No? Buck laughed, sounding a little more awkward than he intended. Aye, smartass, what's going on with it then? Staying on us, he shrugged, a short hand passing his lips. It might just glow whenever you're happy. Genuinely happy, he suggested, tilting his head to get a better look of Buck's own expression, finding humour in how lost he looked. Giovanni told some yokai to find you. If it was a compass, he wouldn't need to do that. So it's... Buck took the pendant back, inspecting it from all angles, watching as the glow slowly faded away. You saying it's a glorified mood ring? Nate's nodded. Maybe. It's whatever Giovanni intended it to be. Well, Giovanni's a whole heap of things, but one thing he ain't is stupid. The purpose behind it all is getting more and more lost, sinking deeper into the fog in Buck's mind. Bait, maybe. It works, seeing as how I picked it up as soon as he fell into the damn forest. And you're not stupid for falling for it either, Nate reassured, quick to jump in as soon as he could tell where Buck's thoughts were going, judging by the sorry expression in his downcast eyes. You're not. Maybe it's a good thing that you found it. Silent, Buck glanced back up at him with a puzzled look. I wouldn't have met you otherwise. Oh, guess that's true. He didn't want to know how bashful he must have looked right now, turning his head to avoid Nate's teasing grin, subtly grumbling under his breath. Quit that, idiot. Quit what? Nate batted his eyelashes. That! So... Damn it, did you find the gun or not? Sorry. Quickly, Nate rushed the last of his giggles to talk freely. The control room. Giovanni, sir. I saw him put it down. Aye, perfect. Drawing out a long sigh, taking a moment to simply stare at the top of Nate's head, Buck reduced his voice to a whisper as he asked something fatally important. You're gonna let me handle this, yeah? Like you said, it's me he wants. Slowly, Nate's smile faded away. You sure? What if... There ain't no what ifs, Nate. One hand came down to hold Nate's shoulders, the other taking him by the chin. You hear me? For God's sake, he had you at gunpoint half an hour ago. If I had... A shuddering breath escaped, head drooping at what they both knew would have happened. Buck didn't hesitate to pull Nate in for a hug. I started all this, and I'm gonna fix it. Just you see. Then I'm all yours once this is over. And Nate wasn't sure what to make of it. Buck playing the hero, putting so much unnecessary weight on himself just so Nate wouldn't have to bear any of it. It left him queasy about what the future held. But Buck trusted him. It'd be unfair if Nate didn't reciprocate. Okay, the brunette nodded, leading him for one last kiss. Just a brief peck, and yet it still made fireworks go off in Buck's mind, judging by his squeaky, giddy reaction. Nate relished in the sight of it. Come on, let's go get him. Pads of Giovanni's fingers rapidly tapped the desk. A long sigh drawn out from his nose. It had been dead silent since the frail yokai scurried to leave, his patience running thin with every second that passed. Just how difficult was it to find him? The boy was a magnet for trouble, clumsy as could be. It shouldn't be any trouble at all, even amidst the labyrinth that was the UFO interior and... Father. He turned himself in, letting the door swing open to alert Giovanni of his presence. Stunned, the mouth's tapping halted entirely. Quiet. And soon enough, a welcoming grin was plastered across Giovanni's face, hands slightly raised. Where have you been? He didn't answer. Buck tried not to focus on the clamminess that his palms suddenly felt. Fists clenched and remaining by his sides, one briefly freed only to shut and lock the door behind him. You're going to listen to everything I have to say, and answer everything too. Giovanni's smile fell and brow raised. Admittedly, he was intrigued, simply finding a slow nod to prompt him to continue. Stepping forward with one quivering boot after the other, his face was cast with Giovanni's shadow once he stopped. Buck didn't want to look at him, if not for his mangled face, worse than from the fight before, then for that harsh assertive glare he always seemed to give him, no matter how blinded. Father, if I do everything you say, can you let the others go? As expected, he wasn't so forgiving. That boy caused his own destruction. Why? I know, but destruction to you and your well-being, and the way you think. All of it. Giovanni had cemented it in his mind. Why couldn't his son do the same? Mio figlio, he is breaking you. Surely you see that. But he's hardly a man, let alone a boy. Giovanni scoffed, finding humor in his own accusations, taking a step with each point. Buck stepped back. It's all in his head, Wyatt. A twisted delusion of the lowest levels, one he is trying to drag you down to. You are Hazeltine, per l'amor de Dio. The son of Giovanni Hazeltine himself. Do you not understand what an honor that is? He'd boast all day if he could, hardly even paying attention to his son anymore. Peering out the windows, he let his thoughts consume him. Buck only saw red, backing up to the desk, patting around on the surface as he could find something relatively useful. And I could give you so much more, but alas. Something smacked us all, the open pages of a book splattering onto the ground moments after the impact. Sure to your castle! Giovanni stared in horror. Excuse me? He wasn't able to keep it in anymore, everything coming out among the heaves and voice cracks. Hazeltine doesn't mean jack shit when you killed it. But keep telling yourself otherwise, even when you're the one that killed Mama. Giovanni scowled, mumbling out a lazy response as he readjusted the time. That was the fire. She passed peacefully in her sleep. He couldn't stop. So you're demented too? What was the news yammering about bruises on the neck for then? Silencio! What, were they worse than your own bruises when you were young? Buck snapped his mouth shut. Such a fiery spirit you have, Wyatt. Giovanni scoffed. How unfortunate. It's leading you to put your faith in all the wrong people. Yeah, like I'd never listen to some no-good deadweight like you. I am your father. You're a bastard. That's what. Buck hiccuped, unable to help the volume of his voice, hoping at least something would get through to him. You're a piece of shit causing nothing but trouble. You'd rather listen to some little voice in your head over me, just because you think it's the gods watching over you. Wyatt! Miss Adams said that no matter what I am, or say, or do, I should get to be loved just like everyone else. Muttering with tears in his eyes, barely audible enough for Giovanni to pick up on it. Buck raised his head to return eye contact once more. His hand trailed on the desk. So I'd choose them over you any day. Wyatt! Because I don't give a shit anymore if it's wrong. And if it hurts you to hear, I love Nick. Always will. Guy or not, I love him more than anything else in the damn world. Even if you say I'll wind up in some horrible place because of it. And even if that's true, fine. It'll be better than having to see your sorry ass ever again. Because I sure as shit don't care about you, or your beliefs, or anything you have to say anymore in the slightest. Having heard far more than enough, Giovanni striked. Silence! Swift as the wind, he offered Buck no time to dodge, aiming neck first to get him down to the ground. You've lost your damn mind, boy! Don't you see? This is what they do to you. This vile atrocity. He never expected to be cut off by something pressed up against his side, his own weapon pushing into his suit, threatening to decimate what was inside to smithereens. The pressure by his sword didn't make a dent in getting Buck's purpose to wane, his finger already quivering as the trigger. Go to hell! but blood couldn't be shed just yet, especially not his own. Giovanni made that fact clear as his keen senses went to overdrive, effortlessly thrusting the boy away from him before he'd shoot. A bullet flew, narrowly dodging the man, impaling one of the several windows instead. Giovanni paid it no mind. He gave his son a measly couple of seconds to scramble away, and once those seconds were up, he trod on his calf to pin him to the ground. Hand it over! No! He proclaimed boldly, rushing to fire once again, the muzzle pointed directly to the bridge of his father's nose. Trembling, struggling to stay in position, and before he could pull himself together to try again, Giovanni delivered one kick to the blaster, the second across Buck's face. He yelped, hunching forward while all the pain in his body flared up by the nerves in his nose, blood already dribbling from the nostrils. On either side of the door, Nate shook the candle with all his might, each one more panicked than the last. Buck! Buck, open the door! What's going on? He locked it! Nate answered to his sister, grasp quickening at an alarming rate, fist now pounding on the wooden paddles. Damn it, Buck, open the door! I feared this would come to pass, Giovanni continued, a slight smile creeping on his face at Nate's struggle, slightly raising his voice to ensure the twins would hear. You're too far gone, desperate to kill your own father. Well, there's nothing else I can do for you now, as I've already realized. Perhaps the gods would like to fix you themselves. Buck! Nate's cries fell on deaf ears, the redhead hardly able to focus amongst the ringing in his ears, the blood, the heavy words his father spat, words he was too terrified to ask the implications of. Yes! Yes! That is the solution! Giovanni laughed, eerily, stepping back to bathe in his newfound revelation. Of course the measly fire cannot possibly be enough. This UFO I carved especially for you, this following I gathered, what if it all came crashing down? A grand spectacle and BBQ. No. The world. All those souls trapped here. Yours, man. How delicious must that be for the all-powerful? How starving they must be with this world of mediocrity. Shall we give them what they deserve, Wyatt? Devo sacrificari per I signori sopra. He didn't let the child answer. In an instant, with a snap of the fingers, they disembarked for the BBQ skies. Missing, Nathan Adams, 13, white, brown hair, brown eyes, last seen in red flannel, black t-shirt, black jeans, red sneakers, responds to Nate. Missing, Noel Faith Adams, 13, white, blue hair, blue eyes, last seen in striped white / blue hoodie, blue denim shorts, black sneakers, responds to nosy. Anything else to add, ma'am? No, that's everything, thank you. Nadia sighed, picking at her sleeve, barely able to hold eye contact with the police officer in front of her. No apparent risk, that's what they labelled it as, and it made her blood boil. Sorry, if it's not too much trouble, I think a search party would... Ma'am, with all due respect, you see how empty the station is? The officer waved his hand around, pointing toward the empty cubicles on the salt table and illuminating their own. Most of the night team is busy with the UFO right now. Earliest day shift officers get here at 6 a.m. You're gonna have to wait a couple hours, sweetheart. Her eye twitched on its own. I don't have a few hours. Well, I'm sure they're fine. Just hang tight. There's complimentary coffee at the reception if you'd like some. Nadia stormed out either way, coffee or not. As usual, the police are fucking useless. She started mumbling something, but eventually kept it to her head, afraid an officer would overhear and be sensitive enough to consider it grounds for arrest. Turning the corner down the hallway, her pace slowed a little, calmed upon spotting her husband waiting for her at the reception, even if he himself looked more than a little frazzled. His head was in his hands, one leg bouncing up and down as he sat slouched. Nadia's hand came to his back as soon as she sat down beside him. It's not like last time, she reassured, without any way to prove that. Still sympathetic for what he'd thinking either way. You keep saying that. I know, but... A sigh escaped her lips, unsure what to say. What could she say? They were both exhausted, naturally so, though neither would dare leave the station without a straight answer. She felt especially terrible for having to stay silent about Buck, fearing bringing attention by reporting him missing would help the authorities find him, destroying everything he worked on to get away from that house. If Nate was somewhere, Buck was close behind. Surely. Still, Defeat weighed her down, barely paying any mind to the officers rushing outside. Though a single sentence caught her off guard. Is that the UFO? Her head shot up, eyes darting straight to the window. Harvey! She tapped the man's arm, giving him a brief warning before leaving to see it for herself, her husband soon following. There it was! What a devastating sight it would become. The vessel started plummeting as soon as it had appeared, straight for the forest, narrowly dodging East Pine. Giovanni ignored all the blaring sirens, very ones he'd arranged on his own accord in case of danger. Danger now consumed him. The children could hardly comprehend what was happening. Nate heard himself crying out for Buck amidst the fast descent, reaching for the door with all his might, even as everything around him crumbled. He'd seen specks of blue, Noel clinging to him so tightly, refusing to let go, all with one hand while the other surrounded them with a shield of ice. How will it work? How easily it'd shatter? Neither of them knew the answer. Quick thinking in a trying time, all forgotten by the time they'd inevitably crash, all shrouded by a blinding light, like a warm blanket to soothe them after a nightmare. Giovanni wouldn't let go of Buck's arm, determined to drag him down to his level right up to the very end. Civilians littered the streets, stepping as far back as North Beach as the UFO paved its way through the trees, flattening anything in its way. The noise alone was enough to burst eardrums, and once that settled, the air above completely covered in smoke, Buck clung to consciousness with all his might. It was all a haze at first, parts of his vision already blinded by the long grass he was met eye to eye with. A blurry canvas blanketed the sky above, mixing with fumes to create an intoxicating orange hue. Buck had to cough to ensure it wouldn't clog his lungs. He came to, staggering to stand, and his heart fell. The UFO. Pieces of it littered all across the forest, glass and metal either stabbing anything in its path or shattering on impact. The result was a fierce combustion. Dry leaves set ablaze on impact, withering away. It all be gone by morning, he'd already predicted. The forest, certainly. Some of the flames were already beginning their onslaught on East Pine as well. Buck couldn't tear his gaze away. Frozen horror to the fire below. From this height, he might be okay, spectating from the cliff edge. The twins weren't so lucky. Noel, Nate whined, rubber paralyzing his left leg, helpless to the destruction around him. Grasping what had just happened, pieces of shattered memory cluttering his mind, it was impossible to even fathom. With little strength he had left, with what little strength he had left, through growing tears, he shoved the debris off of him. Noel! He called out once more, but no one came to answer. Anything more than a couple meters away, completely invisible over the smoke. Limping, he rushed to the nearest clearing he could find, pushing through the fane, hoping to find some life among the wreck. Atop the cliff, he found him. Buck! And he found Nate as well, staring down a little dot he could still recognize. He was alive! Thank the heavens, even if they sat silent to the entire disaster. Completely avoidable if Giovanni hadn't let such a psychotic mindset consume him. Buck never even realized his father was laying right behind him, sprawled out atop a large plate of debris, the gun barely in arm's reach from him. That got the cogs turning in the boy's head. Turning back to Nate, who still watched from below, both their expressions were completely unreadable from that distance. Still, Buck grinned at him, readjusting the sunglasses atop his head. What a state his father was in. Already too weak to walk, and all he had to blame for it was himself. Buck refused to let his pity show, ruffling his hard glare as he kicked the yokai plaster towards him before Giovanni's quivering hand could reach it. Wyatt! The man sputtered in a hoarse voice, dark blood dripping from his tongue as he spoke. What? Crucify! How could he stand above him so effortlessly after a crash like that? Buck didn't say a word. Now he could tower over him freely, and from it the weakness could be more apparent. Weakness in something pathetic, as much as Giovanni tried laughing it off, every chuckle ending with a cough that sounded more than a little painful. He hadn't given up, the laughs told Buck. Even now, with his father rendered useless for the foreseeable future, unable to move more than an inch or talk louder than murmur, his pride was too great. His belief in something that had never come was too deranged. And when he would get better, who knows what travesties he'd attempt to unleash again. With that, Buck showed no mercy in pointing the gun. To his working eye, though such a tire a long time ago, the gun still registered in Giovanni's mind. He fell silent for a brief moment. You won't do it. But Buck didn't look so agreeable, keeping a silent, stern stance over the man. And just for good measure, he flicked the die out to the absolute maximum. 9. They'd be free this way, won't they? Nate and Noel. A guarantee of Giovanni's second death, exactly what they needed. With this, Buck could ensure it. The taunts won't stop him now. You won't. The taunts, the lies, the manipulating, forcing him to be something he's not, to do things he doesn't want to do, to love people he doesn't want to love. He wasn't perfect, far from it, and he knew some parts were from free will rather than Giovanni's control. So given this chance of redemption, he'd be crazy not to take it, no matter what would happen to him because of it. Those dull green eyes of his father's never looked so frightened. Buck reveled in it for a short second, unaware of how hungry he was to witness it. And on the next, he pulled the trigger. What's he? Nate stayed watching for a long while, even when Buck wasn't visible anymore upon working further from the cliff's edge. Buck! Buck, what's going on? He ran, a slow ascent on a steady step, only halting to the pain sound of wheezy coughs. Noelle! There she lay, hardly holding on, eyes fluttering between the open and closed, even when the warm, petrified embrace of her brother surrounded her. She could hear him call to her, very faintly, a sound ringing out into a distant hum. The pass to her cheek hardly registered. Nose, hey, no, wake up, he begged, coughing into his elbow, smoke consuming more and more air to the point it was unbearable. He had to duck down for the slimmest chance to breathe. And yet he found himself staring back up once the bullet was fired. Buck. Bark and blood rained from the heavens, as well as a semi-conscious boy with no regrets. He wasn't sure how long he was falling for, knocked back beyond the cliffs just as soon as the deed was done. Vision in one eye was completely gone, the other blurring from the blast, and from it he could just barely spot the fallen yokai blaster rustling away, and a familiar necklace growing brighter than ever. Glowing brighter than ever. The Hazeltines were abolished. Good riddance, and died in a fire just as they were written to. It'd be foolish to run from fate or destiny, Buck realised, and it was the least he could do for all the damage that was done. He wasn't scared, not one bit. Just thankful, a once foreign concept now welcomed with open arms. Thankful to the highs of those last few months, time once spent praying for a speck of light, begging for good after a short life spent in solitude, to the flowers that still bloom through the cracks, to the stars lighting up his world. To Nate. I'm thankful to you, Nate. My sweet Nate. How did you put up with me after all this time? I ain't got a clue. Especially with father and his sick ideals. But he's gone now. You'll wake up tomorrow, hear that he's dead, and I'll be gone as well. Or maybe not. I don't know. Either way, I'm happy. I'm happy I got to know you. And to love you. Buck! Everything faded to black once before I could hit the ground. The last thing being the last thing visible being a familiar deer coated in a white light, watching on from the other side of the river. Soon the waters would take him, and all Buck could do was smile. I did it, Mama. Father's gone, just like you wanted. Are you proud? And we're going to have to leave it there for today. Yeah, like I said, I was only expecting to get through these 2 chapters, and another insane cliffhanger here is where we end on today. We can at least take solace in the fact Giovanni ain't coming back from this. Will Buck come back from this? We can only hope. And we can only hope that Nate and Noel and Buck and Nadia and Harvey will be able to live peacefully from now on. But we'll have to find out in the next chapter, which, like I said, is another behemoth. The finale. But not the end, because there is actually more coming. Hazel is writing more fic set in this universe. But we will definitely be reading on this channel. So, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode.